Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to a key moment in time for American progress and American health. I'm Jim Whitehead, the CEO of the American College of Sports Medicine and on the board of the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance. We're releasing today, now, a new National Physical Activity Plan. There are many aspects of health: proper diet, avoiding tobacco, stress reduction, adequate sleep. But the role of physical activity for health has a special place and opportunity and urgency, as we're going to hear from our distinguished presenters. We're pleased to have the many leaders at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and also welcome those joining us by webcast throughout the United States and around the world. Well, let me just fast forward, if I can, a little bit about some things. Let me tell a brief story. Not that many years ago, there were meetings going on around the United States about, you know what we really need. Physical activity is fundamentally important, and what we need is a national plan for it that kind of connects dots and so forth. And in a lot of those discussions was, nah, that's impossible. You know, that really can't come together. Reminded of the comment by Nelson Mandela, says, it's always impossible until it's done. And then if we do come to 2010, when the first National Physical Activity Plan was launched, the impossible has been achieved. We're going to hear from a lot of people about how that came together and, more importantly, the achievements that have occurred and also what we're looking for in the future. We actually are going to hear the excitement of both the past and the future at this launch. We'll learn about some remarkable achievements that have already occurred since the original National Physical Activity Plan was created in 2010. And we'll hear about key strategies and priorities for the future, opportunities to actively improve the health of the American people in a powerful and transformative way. So what has the National Physical Activity Plan done to date, stimulated or supported? In 2012, there was a Lancet medical journal article that published a special issue on physical activity, truly transformative. There have been other things that have occurred in Lancet talking about, active health and planetary health and a lot of different things. In 2013, there was, from the Department of Health and Human Services, a Physical Activity Guidelines mid-course report on strategies to increase physical activity in youth. Last year, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy issued a historic call to action on walking and walkable communities. Step it up. Also last year, it was a very good year in regard to physical activity. The reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act established physical education as a central component of a student's well-rounded education, where actually physical education had in many ways been deprioritized for many years. In the transportation area, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation, the FAST Act, was passed, and it requires all national highway system roadways to be designed for safe access to all modes of transportation, including human-propelled active transportation, biking and walking. And then lastly, in 2015, and this is just a partial list, NIH, the global hub, this centric entity in regard to science translated into health, made physical activity research part of the common fund of NIH, which is a congressionally mandated thing for high priorities, areas of science. And this was very seminal. It's transformative. Huge funding, great priority. So that's just a snapshot of things that, this is correlative and causative and supportive and all of those sort of things. But it's a movement together that is changing this country, that is going to improve health. And these achievements that I just went over have occurred in a relatively brief period of time, in a concentrated period of time. So we're all here together about something fundamentally important.
I am very pleased and honored to release the new National Physical Activity Plan. And in releasing the new plan, my comments this morning are going to focus on answering three questions, really clusters of questions, I guess, that I believe are pertinent on an occasion like this. The first one is, what is the National Physical Activity Plan? Where did it come from? And whose plan is it? The National Physical Activity Plan is a comprehensive strategic plan for increasing physical activity in all segments of the U.S. population. The plan, as you'll see when you review it, includes over 250 evidence-based strategies and tactics that are organized around 9 societal sectors. The plan was developed under the auspices of the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance, which is now a fully incorporated nonprofit organization that really is a coalition of about 25 national organizations that are pretty diverse but share at least one thing, and that is an interest in seeing the population of the United States more physically active than is currently the case. So in a sense, the plan is the responsibility of the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance. But as far as I'm concerned, the National Physical Activity Plan is owned by everybody in this country who cares about this issue. And I've said many times, you don't need permission from anybody to use the National Physical Activity Plan. I encourage everybody that cares about this issue to deputize themselves, call themselves an official representative of the National Physical Activity Plan, and start talking to the people that can help us implement the many initiatives that are included in the plan. So technically, the plan is developed by the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance, which is a freestanding not-for-profit organization. It has from the beginning benefited from a tremendous relationship with government agencies, in particular the Department of Health and Human Services, with which the Alliance has a formal memorandum of understanding. And that's not just words on a paper. That's a very living relationship that has benefited tremendously the development of the Alliance. But the plan is for everybody. Second, why are we releasing a new plan? What's different about it? What's important and innovative? Well, probably the most obvious difference between the plan we're releasing today and its predecessor is that we've added 2 new sectors to the plan, and I'm really excited about having added both of those. One is for faith-based settings. I don't need to tell this group or anybody else listening this morning how influential are faith-based organizations on the lives of people in this country. And I think we know that health ministries have been an important component of the role of faith-based organizations in this country for a good while now. We think there's an enormous opportunity for those organizations to contribute to promotion of physical activity in the many people that they that they work with across this country. And we had a wonderful group of experts that contributed to the content in that new sector. The other new one is sport, and sport was included as really a part of another sector in the first plan. There's been a lot of development and attention given to the potential role of sport in contributing to physical activity as a public health goal over the last 5 years. And all of that development warranted establishing a standalone sector. Again, we had a tremendous group of national leaders that came together to provide the content for that, and I'm excited that the recommendations provided now in that sports sector can be hugely influential as we try to figure out how to really optimize the physical activity component of what happens in organized sports programs in this country. There are many new strategies and tactics in the other 7 sectors, and I won't take time this morning to point them out, but I'm confident in saying that each of the expert panels that worked so hard on this did their job. They dug deep, considered all the new developments, both in research and in evolving professional practice in this area, and have produced, I think, content in those other 7 sectors that is substantially upgraded from the recommendations included in the initial plan. We think we need a national physical activity campaign, not to convince Americans that physical activity is important or that it's good for health. They know that. We've won that battle. But there's much to do to inform the American public about how to approach adopting a physically active lifestyle in a way that will be successful. And so we believe there's a need for a national campaign to accomplish that. We need to know how we're doing better than we're able to know right now. And so we call for, in these overarching priorities, establishing a more robust surveillance system, not only for person-level participation in physical activity and whether or not people are meeting physical activity guidelines, but we need a better way of monitoring how we're doing with establishing the initiatives that we know will influence physical activity in the population. And finally, we need greater investments so that leaders in federal agencies and state agencies across the country can provide the leadership that we need to move this issue forward. There are fabulous people working on this across the country. They're in federal agencies, they're in state agencies, but we believe they need more support. They need more investment in order to provide the leadership that will enable them to leverage the resources that exist across the country. The third question is, why do we need a national physical activity plan? And what do we hope to accomplish by having one and by having a new one that we're releasing today? Well, one obvious answer is Americans are not as physically active as we know they should be, and that produces a huge public health burden. So fundamentally, our hope is that having a national physical activity plan will ultimately enable us to positively influence the physical activity levels of Americans and ultimately their overall health. Having a well-developed plan is one step in making the connection between the body of knowledge on the one side, research and professional experience that tells us what we think will work, and putting those initiatives in place at scale across the country. And we've got a lot of good ideas about what to do about this problem, but we struggle to get them implemented at scale. Think about it. Okay, what really matters to your physical activity is what's going on right around you. And so we've got to take these initiatives to ground level across the country, and that's the challenge. The hope is that by having a good national physical activity plan, it'll make it easier for people who care about this issue to do what they want to do.
To be sure, we still must do battle with infectious diseases in our One Health world. We know that. But today, our nation is suffering from an epidemic of chronic disease, a preventable epidemic, enabled by the places and spaces and relationships that shape our choices and can challenge our health on a daily basis. This is the health crisis of our time. Like those who led the way against infectious diseases, our children's children will judge us on how we emerge from this crisis. We cannot spend or regulate or treat our way out of this crisis. We can't wait until we fix our massively expensive and broken healthcare system to prevent preventable disease. But we can prevent our way out of this health crisis through primary upstream prevention interventions, physical activity being the most impactful among them. In a very real way, physical activity is a healthy drug with healthy side effects that counteract that big 3+1 and provide many other quality of life enhancing results that we are still learning about. Yet we know and spend less on physical activity from a research standpoint than we do many a drug class on the market today. That physical activity is a near universally available, low or no cost, quality of life year expanding and life enhancing intervention. If this were truly a drug, it would be a blockbuster. That is why this National Physical Activity Plan is so timely and essential. It provides important new guidance and approaches to make a culture of health a reality in our nation, and focusing on physical activity has the potential to move us rapidly as a nation towards greater health equity and optimal health for all. We know that the places and spaces where we live and the choices we make with the people in them can impact our health more than our genes, more than our income, and more than our access to health care.
A central purpose of the business and industry sector of the National Physical Activity Plan, and subsequently how the CEO pledge evolved, is that a healthier workforce means a healthier bottom line for America's businesses. The research and case studies are there to prove that. What many business leaders may not know, however, are the positive benefits of increased physical activity on the brain. Our own research demonstrates that employees who are physically active and move at regular intervals throughout the day actually drive higher performance. From this perspective, think of the impact that the National Physical Activity Plan can have on productivity and overall job satisfaction. Let's consider success to date in business and industry. Just as Johnson & Johnson has made its own commitment to become the healthiest workforce in the world, senior leaders in many U.S. businesses are now making this their call to action for their organizations. To date, we have 431 signatories on the CEO pledge for physical activity. These are key senior leaders in an organization. Think CEOs, founders, chairpersons, executive directors. The TIA Board of Directors represents all sectors of the tennis industry. And in our efforts to support the National Physical Activity Plan and bring more activity to all Americans, we are absolutely thrilled to have the backing of the sport of tennis, the first of hopefully many entire sports to endorse this pledge and this plan. Along with the governing bodies of tennis, both professional and amateur, that are some of the most influential in all of sport. So we have three sectors of the National Physical Activity Plan being represented right now: business and industry, community recreation, fitness and parks, and the sports sectors. In order to keep the momentum going to further support the National Physical Activity Plan, we know we need to make an impact not only within the workforce, but within our communities as well. That's how we'll truly contribute to creating a healthier America. With that, I'm honored to announce a new achievement that will take place this afternoon at a congressional briefing. For the first time today, just as senior business leaders have committed to get America moving by signing the CEO pledge for physical activity, the Congressional Fitness Caucus, co-chaired by Congressman Kind and Congressman Dold, have agreed to sign the Congressional Commitment to Physical Activity and to share this commitment with their colleagues on Capitol Hill. By signing this important document, they are committing to serve as role models themselves, providing opportunities within their congressional offices to promote physical activity for their staffs and to promote physical activity in their congressional districts.
We are pleased as an organization to be part of this literal National Physical Activity Plan call to action. Only 49% of adults in the United States age 18 or older are meeting the 2008 Federal Activity Guidelines for aerobic activity. Activity levels vary. They vary by age, they vary by sex, and they vary by race ethnicity. Activity levels drop generally with age. Men are generally more active than women. 53% of whites are active as recommended, whereas only 44% of blacks and 41% of Hispanics are active. But the third thing that I want to talk about in terms of what we know is that context matters. And knowing what to do and how much you need to do is very different from being able to do it, and thinking about the opportunity of using context is something that is built in the plan. I want to say that again. It's not enough to just tell people or give people the information that says you should be active for X amount of time at this level of intensity every day. It is really important to create the conditions where that's easier to do than not. And I'm so pleased that inclusion is explicitly addressed in the plan, with a section that talks about what it means and covers all aspects of inclusion. It's not just about race, ethnicity. It is about age. It is about geography. It is about sexual orientation, religion. It's about all of it, and that's a good thing. Time for PE and recess in schools, employer encouragement and possibly incentives for physical activity made convenient for workers must be universally available and sustained. And the action, the plan, the activity plan includes those elements in it. The American Heart Association has been involved in every single one of those sectors. I was pleased to look at the sectors and sort of do a check and say, AHA is engaged. In business and industry, we are part of a CEO roundtable. Jack, I want to talk to you later about the CEO pledge and how that's going to work through our CEO roundtable. Community, recreation, fitness, transportation, land use, and community design. We've been involved in trying to help create the frame for defining how it is that people can achieve ideal cardiovascular health. And in the other sectors that are listed, we're doing some work. The National Physical Activity Plan for everyone and for all is a plan that is universal in its scope, but it does allow for and includes the idea that you might focus on those things around which you have expertise or interest or ability. A healthy America is a heart-healthy America, is an America where every day everyone has and all have the opportunity to realize a life that includes regular movement and activity that is so regularized. I don't know if I made up that word, but I sure like it. Regularized. It's hard to get it off out of your mouth. So much the way we do what we do every day, so much taken for granted that it is so much a part of everyday living that everywhere we live and breathe, movement happens and health happens. And so this plan is about creating that America where movement is what we do.
I am just so proud of all of the leaders, the professionals, the researchers from across all of these sectors that we've been talking about, that we've come together to create this, to create comprehensive strategies to guide efforts throughout the nation. So wherever you are, there are strategies that can be implemented. And within this plan, I also see tactics in each sector that can help the council, meaning us, as well as all of our partners, continue to create better solutions to promote physical activity and inspire a healthier nation. And the addition of the sports sector, I think, will really help us to look at access and opportunities to play sports. We know, bottom line is active kids do better, right? Active kids do better. And John, I love what you said about how you've created and looked at this in light of all of the other kind of risk factors. And you talked about, really talked about physical activity being a gateway. And we call certainly physical activity a positive gateway behavior, because what we know that kids who are physically active, all the good stuff goes up, right? And all the bad stuff goes down. And so we really do think it is just that. It is key to any of our programming and across the country. So we know that our fields, gyms, and courts can provide environments to learn and exercise positive values, including perseverance, commitment, leadership, teamwork, communication, problem solving, and conflict management. When sport and physical activity programs are thoughtfully designed, sports set a foundation for a healthy and active lifestyle from childhood into adulthood. I can attest that this section offers strategies that will help us ensure our sports foster physical literacy, prioritize safety, establish national policies, and expand access for people from all ages, backgrounds, and abilities. I look forward to seeing how communities and organizations across the nation utilize this plan to help us reimagine youth sports and create environments where we can all play for life.
As a person who has depended on physical activity for a life and livelihood, in addition to having a running career that has spanned close to 50 years and 150,000 miles, I'd like to share a few personal observations and thoughts. Just as an athlete needs to plan to identify goals, train, and measure success, so does a nation. First, we need to change our country's mindset. Nearly half of our citizens fail to meet even the most modest standards of exercise. Bill Bowerman, celebrated Oregon track coach and co-founder of Nike, once famously said, "If you have a body, you're an athlete." I would add to this, and since you're an athlete, then move. Just move. Physical activity does not necessarily mean running 10Ks or marathons or exercising at your local gym or playing field. Such notions can be daunting to many from the start. Physical activity can just mean moving, and nearly everyone can get up and move. Walk, climb stairs, rake, walk a pet, shovel snow, walk through a museum, garden, bike, throw a frisbee, anything to squeeze muscles and push blood around on a daily basis. When people think of themselves as athletes, behaviors change in subtle ways that embrace physical movement. For example, how many times have you stressed out because you can't find a parking space near the door of your grocery store, only to avoid a 30-second walk from a more distant space? An athlete's mindset is to park in a more distant space and enjoy the walk. An athlete will choose stairs instead of an elevator, or she may choose to walk or bike instead of driving or using public transportation. My goal, our goal, is to transform the American psyche from a couch potato mindset to one that embraces and celebrates physical activity.
I think it's really important to think about certainly what each of us can do in our own lives to improve our own activity levels. But I think just as you've heard, speaking up in your kids' school about physical education, about recess, about other activity during that school day, speaking up to your employers. If you don't have programs or initiatives at work that promote physical activity, speak up. We heard a lot about safety issues and sidewalks and bike lanes. Speak up to your city council about those things. So I think it's really important that we think, what we can do as individuals for ourselves, but also all these things we can do that are going to help support other people being active as well.
I often describe the plan as a roadmap for changing our communities in ways that will result in many more residents of those communities being physically active. There are many elements in the national plan that would operate at the national or federal or state levels, but there are far more initiatives in the plan that really operate at the community level. And so I second the comments of my colleagues here, but I really do think of the national plan as fundamentally operating at the community level. And the way to get these things done at the community level is for residents of those communities to communicate effectively with policymakers in those communities. And in the end, I think if we're successful in implementing the plan, that's really how it's going to happen.
Change begins with raising the level of awareness, and we all have spheres of influence. And what we need to do is to really exercise that influence that we have, whether it's in our church community, the faith-based communities, whether it's in schools, whether it's in the workplace, because it's really being able to get people to change their behaviors where they work, live, play, and pray. And it really starts with us as individuals taking advantage of those areas of influence that we have.
And just to end with a quote, Winston Churchill, you may have heard this. He famously said, "This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning." We're going to have a new era of progress in regard to improving physical activity and health, and you're all going to be part of it. Thank you very much for being part of this. Thank you.